A marvelous sun looked down from ecstasy's skies on worlds of deathless bliss, perfection's home. God's everlasting day surrounded her. Domains appeared of sempiternal light, invading all nature with the absolute joy. Arisen beneath a triple mystic heaven, the seventh immortal earth where sleep sublime, homes of the blessed released from death and sleep, where grief can never come, nor any pain. Eternal mountains ridge on gleaming ridge, whose lines were graved as on sapphire plate, and etched the borders of heaven's lustrous noon, climbed like piled temple stairs, and from their heads all topless meditation heard below. The approach of a blue pilgrim multitude, and listen to the great arriving voice of the white travel hymn of timeless seas. In cities cut like gems of conscious soul, and wonderful pastures, and on gleaming coasts, bright forms were seen, eternity's luminous skies, above her rhythming Godhead's world, the spheres, wrapped mobile fixities, here blindly sought by the huge erring orbits of our stars. Immortal harmonies filled her listening ear. A great spontaneous utterance of the heights, on Titan wings of rhythmic grandeur born, poured from some deep spiritual heart of sound, strains trembling with the secrets of the gods. In the harmony of an original sight, she saw all nature marvelous without fault. Endless aspired the climbing of those heavens, reeve upon reeve received her soaring view. In noon she beheld the strong immortal seeds, who live for a celestial joy and hope, the middle regions of the unfading ray, great forms of deities set in deathless stars, eyes of an unborn gaze towards her lead, through a transparency of crystal fire.
So, good morning. So we're reading in Book 11, Book of Everlasting Day. Savitri has conquered death, and afterwards she was kind of thrown out into this divine world or series of worlds, which the author is now describing. And we've just heard a little of Mother reading of the nature of these worlds in which Savitri has been thrust. And we see that they're just packed with all divine qualities, but especially what we're reading now is the absolute delight and beauty of these worlds that she's experiencing and which are being described here. So we had just started this canto last time. Now we're on page 674, and I believe we're at line 112. So we'll continue from there. In the earlier description, we've seen the beauty of the nature that is there, and then a description of these wonderful cities and nations of beings living in this realm, immortal, divine. I'll just read a little from the last segment that we read last time. Around, this is on page 673, towards the bottom, about 3/4 of the way down. Around the deathless nations moved and spoke, souls of a luminous celestial joy, faces of stark beauty, limbs of the molded ray, in cities cut like gems of conscious stone, and wonderful pastures, and on gleaming coasts, bright forms were seen, eternity's luminous tribes. Above her, rhythming Godhead's world of spheres, Rapt mobile fixities, here blindly sought by the huge erring orbits of our stars. Ecstatic voices smote at hearing's chords. Each movement found a music all its own. Songs thrilled of birds upon unfading boughs, the colors of whose plumage had been caught from the rainbow of imagination's wings. Immortal fragrance packed the quivering breeze. In groves that seemed moved bosoms and trembling depths, the million children of the undying spring bloomed, pure unnumbered stars of hued delight, nestling for shelter in their emerald sky. Fairy flower masses looked with laughing eyes. So that's, I think, where we left off. And let's continue from there today, and let's start here at this side. Would you please read?
Dancing cows, an iridescent sea, eternized to heaven's ever-wakeful sight, the crowding petal glow of marvelous tints which float across the curtained lids of dream. Immortal harmonies filled her listening ear. A great spontaneous utterance of the heights on Titan wings of rhythmic grandeur born, poured from some deep spiritual heart of sound, strains trembling with the secrets of the gods. A spirit wandered happily in the wind, a spirit brooded in the leaf and stone. The voices of thought-conscious instruments along a living verge of silence strayed, and from some deep, a wordless tongue of things and fathoms inexpressible chanting rose, translating into a voice the unknown. A climber on the invisible stair of sound, music, not with these few and striving steps, aspired that wander upon transient strings, but changed its ever new and uncounted notes in a passion of unforeseeing discovery, and kept its old unforgotten ecstasies a growing treasure in the mystic heart.
Thank you. So after describing the general scene of these worlds, the nature and the cities and the peoples of this realm, he now describes how all the senses take in this kind of divinized sensations of the world through the sight, through the fragrances, through the sounds of this realm. So he begins with the vision, eternized to heaven's ever-wakeful sight, the crowding petal glow of marvel's tints, which float across the curtain lids of dream. So first the sight, then immortal harmonies fill the listening ear, a great spontaneous utterance of the heights. So we see that how the sounds come expressive of the divinity of this realm. The voices of thought-conscious instruments along a living verge of silence strayed, and from some deep, a wordless tongue of things, unfathomed, inexpressible, chantings rose, translating into a voice the unknown. A climber on the invisible stair of sound. It almost seems as if the sounds can rise up into some greater heaven of delight. Makes me think of Narad's Om choir, which I think he kind of aspires to reflect some of this in these chantings of Om. So let's continue. Would you read?
A consciousness that yearned through every cry of unexplored attraction and desire, it found and searched again the unsatisfied deeps, hunting as if in some deep secret heart to find some lost or missed felicity. In those far-lapsing symphonies she could hear, breaking through enchantments of the ravished sense, the lyric voyage of a divine soul, mid spume and laughter tempting with its brow, the charm of innocent Circean isles, adventures without danger beautiful, in lands where siren wonder sings its lures, from a rhythmic rocks in ever foaming seas. In the harmony of an original sight, delivered from our limiting ray of thought and the reluctance of our blinded hearts to embrace the Godhead in whatever guise, she saw all nature marvelous without fault. Invaded by beauty's universal revel, her being's fiber reached out, vibrating, and claimed deep union with its outer selves, and on the heart's chords made pure to seize all tones, heaven's subtleties of touch, unwearying forced, more vivid raptures than earth's life can bear.
Thank you. Let's pause there. in these opening lines, it's interesting that there is this kind of searching for this delight in things. And it wants to find all the delights that are there hidden in that world. It found and searched again the unsatisfied deeps, hunting as if in some deep secret heart to find some lost or missed felicity. And then there's some allusions to Homer's Odyssey. So this epic, Greek epic from Homer about the Circean Isles. So this is a story in Homer's epic, which I'll just give the outline from ChatGPT. So Odysseus and his men reached the island, I don't know how to pronounce this, Aia, home of the enchantress Circe, daughter of the sun, Helios. What happens? Circe welcomes part of the crew into her hall. She gives them a drugged drink mixed with magical herbs. The men are transformed into swine, though their minds remain human. Hermes intervenes, giving Odysseus the herb moly, which protects him from her magic. Odysseus confronts Circe. She restores the men. He and his companions remain on the island for a year, living in ease and forgetfulness. Mythic meaning. Circe represents bewitching pleasure, illusion, and loss of human purpose. The danger is not death, but forgetfulness and stagnation. Before Odysseus departs, Circe gives crucial instructions for the next stage of the journey, including how to survive the sirens. So the sirens also come next here in Sri Aurobindo's account. First he says, the charm of innocence, Circean Isles. But I would say here that we see in Homer's epic that this delight kind of transforms or turns the men into swine, and so they luxuriate in these pleasures of the flesh, let's say, of the body. And but in Sri Aurobindo's account, these are divinized. They're not subject to this fall into degradation as in Homer's depiction. As he says, the charm of innocent Circean Isles. So here in this world of supermind, there is just this kind of delight of this enchantress Circe, but not the fall. Okay, and then adventures without danger, beautiful. So again, he says this adventure without danger, as in Homer's epic. In lands where siren wonder sings its lures. So the sirens are also come from Homer's Odyssey. So the sirens. The sirens do not live on Circe's island, but Odysseus encounters them immediately afterward, following her guidance. Circe's warning. The sirens sit in a meadow surrounded by the bones of dead sailors. They sing irresistibly and promise knowledge of all things. Their song tempts sailors to steer towards them, causing shipwreck. Following Circe's instructions, sailors plug their ears with wax, and Odysseus is bound to the mast, so he alone may hear safely. So he cannot kind of run after them, after these alluring sounds, but because he's tied to the mast. The sirens sing, offering omniscience and glory. Odysseus desperately begs to be released. The crew tightens his bonds until the danger passes. They promise, the sirens promise knowledge of all that happened at Troy and all things upon the earth. The temptation is therefore intellectual and spiritual, not sensual alone, a fatal attraction to forbidden or premature knowledge. Okay. Here is a translation of the Song of the Sirens from the Odyssey, Book 12. Come here, they sang, renowned Odysseus, honor to the Achaean name, and listen to our two voices. No one ever sailed past us without staying to hear the sweetness of our song, and he who listens goes on his way not only charmed, but wiser than before. For we know all the toils that the Argives give, or the Argives and Trojans endured in wide Troy by the will of the gods, and we know whatever happens upon the fruitful earth. Mm. Yeah, there's this fear of the sensual delight and also of knowledge, of this kind of divine knowledge. It's interesting, of this being tied to the mast. It's almost as if one has to kind of stand back, secure in the Purusha consciousness or something, the witness consciousness, to observe this knowledge without being taken away by it. So I just wanted to share that to give a little depth and context to what Sri Aurobindo is describing. But we see that here it's only the kind of positive qualities that are present in this supramental world and not these dangers. Right. And perhaps there's, hints of that in Homer as well, that there are these kind of, very beautiful, sensuous delights that exist, but he's kind of warning that they can lead us into some kind of fall or temptation. And the same with the knowledge. So let's continue. Helmut?
What would be suffering here was fiery bliss. All here but passionate hint and mystic shade, divined by the inner prophet who perceives the spirit of delight in sensuous things, turned to more sweetness than can now be dreamt. The mighty signs of which earth fears the stress, trembling because she cannot understand, it must keep obscure in forms strange and sublime, were here the first lexicon of an infinite mind, translating the language of eternal bliss. Here, rapture was a common incident. The lovelinesses of whose captured thrill our human pleasure is a fallen thread, lay symbol shapes, a careless ornament, soon on the rich brocade of Godhead's dress. Things fashioned were the imaged homes where mind arrived to fathom a deep physical joy. The heart was a torch lit from infinity. The limbs were trembling densities of soul.
Thank you. Let's pause. So we see here the contrast between this divine world and our earth. He's in that first line, he says, what would be suffering here was fiery bliss there in that realm. So it also suggests that what we have here is a kind of a derivation, but a degraded derivation from that world. All here, but passionate hint and mystic shade, divined by the inner prophet who perceives the spirit of delight in sensuous things, turn to more sweetness than can now be dreamed. Well, the next sentence shows this contrast more yet. The mighty signs of which earth fears the stress, trembling because she cannot understand, and must keep obscure in forms strange and sublime, were here the first lexicon of an infinite mind, translating the language of eternal bliss. So it suggests that this delight was there, was the natural way of things. All things were translating that delight into forms. But here these things get translated, kind of mistranslated in obscure ways. Mm-hmm. Yeah, here there's no fear. There's just a searching after this delight everywhere. But it's just the natural way of things. Here, rapture was a common incident. And then again, he suggests how it's translated here in our world, the lovelinesses of whose captured thrill, our human pleasure is a fallen thread. And there they lay symbol shapes, a careless ornament sewn on the rich brocade of Godhead's dress. It just suggests, the profusion of beauty and delight in that world, just carelessly thrown here and there. And this next line is also interesting. Things fashioned were the imaged homes where mind arrived to fathom a deep physical joy. So there's a physicality also in that realm, a physical joy. And the heart was a torch lit from infinity, and the limbs were trembling densities of soul. There, the physical is fully expressive of that divine delight that exists there. So shall we continue? Okay.
In the beginning, it said the seven immortal worlds.
Yeah.
So these are physical realities, they're just immortal.
Yeah, we talked about that earlier. I had thought about it a little bit more since our last meeting. We talked about it last week. And, I had mentioned that in the Vedas, or in Sri Aurobindo's interpretations of the Vedas, he speaks of the seven planes of existence. Satchidananda, the supermind, and mind, life, and matter. But he speaks that of each of these seven planes having kind of seven sub-planes. So each carries the others within itself. Each of these seven main planes carries the others as sub-planes. Okay, so there is a kind of a physical realm to each of these seven planes. So, but here he speaks of seven immortal earths. So it seems to me that perhaps it is that physical subplane of these realms, but uplifted into supermind. So not just like the physical aspect of the physical plane or the physical aspect of the vital plane, but those subplanes kind of lifted up and transformed and existing in the immortal supermind. They're all divinized, right? They're all immortal in that plane. So they exist there perhaps in their ideal form. And in the lower form, they take their undivine forms, as if in our physical realm, or in the vital realm, or in the mental realm. Yeah. It's divinized. I don't know how subtle it is. Yeah, perhaps. Certainly free of this imperfection. So we can continue.
These were the first domains, the outer courts immense, but least in range and least in price. The slightest ecstasies of the undying gods. Higher her swing of vision swept and new, admitted through large sapphire opening gates into the wideness of a light beyond. These were but sumptuous decorated doors to worlds nobler, more felicitously fair. Endless aspired the climbing of those heavens, realm upon realm received her soaring view. Then on what seemed one crown of the ascent, where finite and the infinite are one, immune she beheld the strong immortals' seats, who live for a celestial joy and rule, the middle regions of the unfading ray. Great forms of deities sat in deathless tears, eyes of an unborn gaze towards her leaned through a transparency of crystal fire. In the beauty of bodies wrought from rapture's lines, shapes of entrancing sweetness spilling bliss, feet glimmering upon the sunstone courts of mind, heaven's cupbearers bore round the eternal's wine.
Thank you. Let's pause. So these first lines suggest that what he has been describing of this divinely beautiful and ecstatic scenes and beings were just the lower tier of this realm in which he's entering, these supramental realms. And here he then ascends higher into a middle sphere. the middle regions of the unfading ray. And there, Savitri, who is ascending into these worlds, immune she beheld the strong immortal seats, who live for a celestial joy and rule the middle regions of the unfading ray. Great forms of deities sat in deathless tears, eyes of an unborn gaze towards her leaned through a transparency of crystal fire. So it suggests in this middle realm are these gods, divine beings, looking at her in the beauty of bodies wrought from rapture's lines, shapes of entrancing sweetness, spilling bliss. So these are even greater worlds than what she has encountered so far. And the description continues. Would be Margaret.
A tangle of bright bodies, of moved souls, tracing the close and intertwined delight, the harmonious thread of lives forever joined in the passionate oneness of a mystic joy, as if sunbeams made living and divine. The golden-bosomed Apsara goddesses, in groves flooded from an argent disk of bliss, that floated through a luminous sapphire dream, in a cloud of raiment lit with golden limbs, and gleaming footfalls treading fairy swords, verging motions of beckoned innocences, who know their riot for a dance of God, world linked in moonlit revels of the heart. Impeccable artists of unerring forms, magician builders of sound and rhythmic words, wind-haired Gandharvas chanted to the ear the odes that shape the universal thought, the lines that tear the veil from deity's face, the rhythm that brings the sounds of wisdom sea. Immortal figures in illumined brows, our great forefathers on those splendors moved, termless in power and satisfied of light, they enjoyed the sense of all for which we strive.
Thank you. Let's pause. Again, in this realm are emphasized these kind of divine beings and participating in this bliss of that realm. And here there are some more references to these beings, the Apsara goddesses, and later the wind-haired Gandharvas who chanted to the ear. So I looked this up as well. So the earliest appearances of these Apsaras are in the Vedas. The Rig Veda, in the Rig Veda, Apsaras are rare and mysterious, not yet courtly dancers. They belong to a liminal, watery, and atmospheric realm. The name Apsaras derives from Ap, water, and Shri or Saras, to move, flow, she who moves in the waters. They are originally water or cloud spirits associated with fertility, atmosphere, and hidden beauty. And then a key figure, Uvashi, who apparently, that there's a poem by Sri Aurobindo, no? Urvasi. So this is from Rig Veda, preserves a dialogue between the mortal king Pururavas and the Apsaras. She is divine, unattainable, bound to cosmic law rather than human emotion. And then in the Atharva Veda, expansion of their nature, the Apsaras there appear more frequently, and there they are linked with the Gandharvas, celestial musicians. They begin to acquire an aura of seductive beauty, but still retain supernatural ambiguity. Then the Brahmanas, 900-700 BC. Here the mythology becomes clearer. They are wives or companions of Gandharvas, inhabitants of the intermediate world, connected with ritual imagination and inspiration. They sometimes distract ascetics or interfere with sacrificial concentration, an early form of their later role as agents of divine testing. And then Upanishadic period. They are mentioned less often, but acquire symbolic meaning, embodiments of delight, ananda, attractions of heavenly existence, rewards awaiting ritual merit. In the Katha Upanishad, celestial maidens are offered to Nachiketas as temptations, Nachiketas, I guess, representing pleasures that do not grant immortality. And then again in later epic period, Mahabharata and Ramayana, Apsaras become celestial dancers of Indra's heaven, embodiments of beauty and charm, frequently sent to disturb ascetics whose tapas threatens cosmic balance. And then there's several of them named, including Urvasi. And then in the Puranas, they now clearly belong to Svarga, Indra's court. They become associated with dance, music, aesthetic rasa. So we see that they kind of appear throughout this history of Indian literature, ancient Indian literature. So I think it's interesting that Sri Aurobindo ties his epic and these beings of what she's describing here in this supramental realm to all this earlier literature. Yes, yeah, right, the Bacchant innocences here. And here, he kind of stresses this innocences, right? Usually the Bacchant is associated, with, also there are these dances of, I guess, I don't know if they are, you could say deities, but, and but more associated with sensual pleasures, And here it's somehow transformed into just that delight of existence. Yeah.
When you say though that he is that's let's call it Western literature or background, and he's putting the two together to show the so-called heaven, the heavenly realms, how they are translated down on earth.
Right.
The realms of the gods in various cultures. So we're pulling the whole thing together because it's evolutionary. And so Savitri represents this evolution of bringing all that divinity or that bliss into the present, so it creates a future that is being during the day, something like that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there are these kind of fundamental archetypes in a way that we see expressed in these different literatures throughout the ages, both East and West, right? And of this divine delight, but also this possibility of it getting mixed and becoming sensuous and distorted, I guess, into physical pleasure. So we see that running throughout, and then the dangers of that, but also that it's a derivation from something, from some divine realm, as you say. And then I was thinking about like this whole, the whole epic as a whole kind of has some of that flavor, because this whole descent into death also, and after this kind of descent into death, and then there's some kind of transformation that takes place at this lowest realm, and then Savitri is thrust up into this divine realm afterwards, what she's describing here. But that basic kind of archetype is also there in the Western and Vedic literature. So we see it throughout. And so even the whole of Savitri carries this kind of basic idea of this need for descent into the darkness or into the subconscious realms of our being before that kind of transformation can take place.
Well, that's the epic, universal epic.
Right. Yeah. Right.
The thing about immortality is that immortality is dynamic. So that's why evolution comes.
Right.
Evolution is the dance part. You have to have that part, or we fall into the static heaven. He's going to renounce these heavens. He's going to renounce these heavens.
Right.
So that's not it.
Right. Mm-hmm.
All these are kind of
yeah, okay. Perhaps they're typal beings. So from in these other heavens in which they apparently dwell may be typal worlds. Sri Aurobindo speaks of them as typal, that they're fixed in that particular level or quality, and they're not evolving as we do on earth. So I think that's probably correct. And maybe that's what B is alluding to, that this heaven also is not it. It's still, Savitri wants to bring that down onto earth. And so she insists that Savitri or Satyavan be kind of brought back to life on earth. And then that is more the transformation that finally happens.
What is that? It would be the reason that in the Western was developed more material level. And I mean, that's the question comes to me. There's a reason for this.
Yeah, well, that's kind of perhaps, well, I don't know. I mean, we're kind of speaking about this earlier stage of the civilizational development when there was still this kind of symbolic age where these kind of these myths, let's say, or these archetypal kind of figures and so forth and ideas were laid down, like in Homer or in these other literatures. So in that sense, I think that throughout the world there was this kind of symbolic age in which people were more, let's say, attuned to these inner realms of existence and of our psyche. And then, yes, I think there was a later development where in the West there grew this, let's say, kind of tendency to go outward, look outward and analyze in the West, and a kind of a continuing emphasis on interior exploration in the East. The reason for that, I'm not sure. Perhaps both needed to be explored. Yeah, both these realms needed to be explored, perhaps, to their utmost, and so there was this kind of split that occurred, so that there could be, this extreme exploration of outer physical matter in the West, and then this extreme inner exploration of these inner realms, which we find in India and elsewhere in the East. So something necessary for the world's development. But what was the trigger that led, to this outward turn or this inward turn? I don't know. Shall we continue? Three.
$220 what? High seers. High seers, moved poets, saw the eternal thoughts that travelers from on high arrive to us, deformed by our search, tricked by costuming mind, like gods disfigured by the pangs of birth, seize the great words that which now are frail sounds caught by difficult rapture on a mortal tongue. The strong who stumble and sin were calm, proud gods, their lightning filled with glory and with flame, melting in waves of sympathy and sight, smitten like a lyre that throbs to others' bliss, drawn by the cause of ecstasies unknown, her human nature faint with heaven's delight. She beheld the clasp to earth denied and bore the imperishable eyes of veilless love. More climbed above, level to level reached, beyond what tongue can utter or mind dream. Worlds of an infinite reach crowned nature's stir. There was a greater tranquil sweetness. There, a subtler and profounder ethers filled, and mightier scheme than heavenliest sense can give.
Thank you. Here there's, I think, another reference to something in the Vedas. Just going back a few lines where this idea begins, it says, "Our great forefathers in those splendors moved, termless in power and satisfied of light. They enjoyed the sense of all for which we strive." And then the description continues, "High seers, moved poets, saw the eternal thoughts that travelers from on high arrive to us, deformed by our search, tricked by a costuming mind, like gods disfigured by the pangs of birth. Seize the great words which now are frail sounds caught by difficult rapture on a mortal tongue." In the Rig Vedas, Sri Aurobindo speaks of these Angarasi rishis, and I think sometimes he kind of translates it as, or uses this term, forefathers, and they kind of seem to be some kind of like semi-divine beings. Not clear whether they're actually human or divine in their nature. But I mean, it kind of suggests, we might even just put it in simpler terms of, of these ancient Vedic rishis that gave us this kind of original knowledge of the Vedas, which Sri Aurobindo is here kind of translating into more modern terms. But to a great extent is reflecting that same kind of story and knowledge here in this epic of the Vedas, let's say of the Rig Vedas, which these Vedic rishis brought down, and what he's kind of describing here in inspiration, receiving this knowledge coming from above through and a kind of awakened consciousness. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think maybe Mother suggests that these early rishis, that they may have been like vibhutis or something, kind of descending to bring some knowledge here on earth. Mm. 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 Yeah. So as long as we're taking human bodies that kind of participate in that, in those limitations, let's say, of the physical. So he kind of speaks of a little bit of this process of inspiration, of, let's say, poetic revelation in language of this higher knowledge, and how it can become deformed by the intervening layers of the mind. And then he uses this simile, like gods disfigured by the pangs of birth. Very interesting. They seize the great words which now are frail sounds caught by difficult rapture on a mortal tongue. For us now, it's very difficult to receive these inspirations in their pure form.
Even it's difficult for them to express it.
Mm. Right.
Because in this ground, all of that happens.
Yeah. But she is there in that supramental realm and seeing this kind of in its purity, and she's seeing these immortal eyes of these beings looking into her eyes, and she's feeling that divine delight and that divine love, which she describes, so the imperishable eyes of veilless love. So she's beholding that. Mm. Worlds of an infinite reach crown nature's stir. This is the crown of nature, the highest expression of nature, which is an expression of the divine in form. And then at those highest reaches of this realm, at the end of this passage, it seems to suggest going higher beyond this middle realm of the gods and the divine beings there, where there is a greater tranquil sweetness, a subtler and profounder ether's field, and mightier scheme than heavenliest sense can give. It seems to broaden out into a wider ether and field of existence in these higher reaches, I think, of supermind. Yeah, we have just one more before the next section. So yes, let's finish. And you can read.
Their breath carried a stream of seeing mind. Form was a tenuous raiment of the soul. Color was a visible tone of ecstasy. Shapes seen half immaterial by the gaze, and yet voluptuously palpable, made sensible to touch the indwelling spirit. The high perfected sense illumined lived, a happy vassal of the inner ray. Each feeling was the eternal's mighty child, and every thought was a sweet, burning God. Air was a luminous feeling, sound a voice, sunlight the soul's vision, and moonlight its dream. On a wide living base of wordless calm, all was a potent and a lucid joy. Into those heights her spirit went floating up, like an upsoaring bird who mounts unseen, voicing to the ascent his throbbing heart, of melody till a pause of closing wings comes quivering in his last contented cry, and he is silent with his soul discharged, delivered of its heart's burden of delight, experience mounted on joy's colored breast, to inaccessible spheres in spiral flight. Their time dwelt with eternity as one, immense felicity joined rapt repose.
Thank you. So again, he's bringing together the divinity of the sense of the senses in that realm, where form was a tenuous raiment of the soul, color a visible tone of ecstasy, and shapes seen half immaterial by the gaze and yet voluptuously palpable, made sensible to touch the indwelling spirit. So there is this palpable physicality there, but yet not fixed as in our physical realm, not hard and dry like Mother would sometimes describe it here. The high perfected sense, illumined, lived, a happy vassal of the inner ray. And then each feeling was the Eternal's mighty child, and every thought was a sweet burning God. So not only the senses, the physical kind of senses were divinized, but also the feelings and the thoughts, all divinized. And there's a beautiful image of this bird soaring up through those, upwards through those heavens, like an upsoaring bird who mounts unseen, voicing to the ascent his throbbing heart of melody, till a pause of closing wings comes quivering in his last contented cry, and he is silent with his soul discharged, delivered of his heart's burden of delight. Just imagine that bird soaring upwards, crying, and then reaching the peak and describe what? I'm sorry, I'm not catching what line you're talking about. Delivered of his heart's throbbing, or he's crying as this bird is crying as he's soaring upward, and then in his last contented cry, he's fully satisfied and he delivers his last cry. What? Yeah. Yeah, it's just an image of. Right. Right. But it's like describing those planes which just ascend higher and higher. And Savitri is kind of ascending like that bird through those various levels, reaching upwards.
Yes, but he is what?
He? The bird. Yeah. Like an upsoaring bird who mounts, voicing to the ascent his throbbing heart. And there time dwelt with eternity as one. Immense felicity joined rapt repose. There is this unification of time and eternity and felicity and calm repose. So we'll stop there for today.
I just found another verse from page 111. So the second
there are brighter earths and wider heavens than ours. There are the ants that lean blue to make on them. So somehow the description was a lot better than the description of the dramatic levels. And there are also this is higher
Right. Yeah, in fact, I think in all the different planes, there are this hierarchy of levels. And even the life planes reach up into these heavens, which he describes. And the mind planes also reach up into these. Well, yeah. Yeah. So that they were created in the descent, in the involution. So they descend from some height of being towards physicality. Like we were kind of saying, there are these sub-levels of each of the planes. So, Gustav.
A marvelous sun looked down from ecstasy's skies on worlds of deathless bliss, perfection's home. God's everlasting day surrounded her. Domains appeared of sempiternal light, invading all nature with the absolute's joy. Arisen beneath a triple mystic heaven, the seventh immortal earth where seen sublime, homes of the blessed, released from death and sleep, where grief can never come, nor any pain. Eternal mountains ridge on gleaming ridge, whose lines were graved as on sapphire plate, and etched the borders of heaven's lustrous noon, climbed like piled temple stairs, and from their heads of topless meditation heard below the approach of a blue pilgrim multitude, and listened to a great arriving voice of the wide travel hymn of timeless seas. In cities cut like gems of conscious stone, and wonderful pastures, and on gleaming coasts, bright forms were seen, eternity's luminous strides, above her rhythming Godhead's world, the spheres, wrapped mobile fixities, here blindly sought by the huge erring orbits of our stars. Immortal harmonies filled her listening ear. A great spontaneous utterance of the heights on Titan wings of rhythmic grandeur born, poured from some deep spiritual heart of sound, strains trembling with the secrets of the gods. In the harmony of an original sight, she saw all nature marvelous without fault. Endless as far the climbing of those heavens, reeve upon reeve received her soaring view. Immune she beheld the strong immortal seas, who live for a celestial joy and whom the middle regions of the unfading ray, great forms of deities set in deathless stars, eyes of an unborn gaze towards her lean, through a transparency of crystal fire.
Thanks to Sri Aurobindo.